The night sky above Jack Miller's cabin erupted in a blaze of light. He looked up from his wood carving, squinting through the window at the strange glow painting the forest in shades of blue and purple. Something had torn through the atmosphere and crashed less than a mile from his home. Jack grabbed his jacket, flashlight, and first aid kit. Living alone in the Montana wilderness for the past 5 years had taught him to be prepared for anything. But nothing could have prepared him for this. He followed the trail of broken trees and scorched earth. The smell of burnt metal and strange chemicals filled the air. When he reached the small clearing, Jack stopped dead in his tracks. This was no meteorite. A sleek vessel about the size of a small car had carved a trench into the earth. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to shimmer even in the darkness, with strange symbols etched across its surface that glowed faintly. Jack approached cautiously, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Hello," he called out, feeling foolish. "Anyone hurt in there?" A section of the craft suddenly slid open with a soft hiss. Smoke poured out, carrying a sweet alien scent. Jack covered his mouth with his sleeve and moved closer. Inside, slumped against what looked like a control panel, was a figure. Not human, but close enough. The being had blue skin that seemed to shimmer with tiny lights, like stars beneath the surface. Long silver hair framed a face that was almost human, but with features too perfect, too symmetrical. A delicate circlet rested on her head, inset with stones that caught the light of his flashlight and broke it into rainbows. She wasn't moving. Jack's first aid training kicked in. He checked for breathing and found it, shallow but steady. A dark liquid that seemed more like ink than blood seeped from a wound on her temple. "Hang on," he whispered. "I'll get you out of here." The craft made an ominous groaning sound. Something inside sparked, and Jack knew they didn't have much time. He carefully lifted the alien figure. She was lighter than she looked, almost weightless in his arms. The circlet slipped, and he awkwardly pushed it back into place, noticing more strange symbols on her clothing, elaborate patterns that looked important, like insignia or badges of rank. He had barely cleared the crash site when the vessel shuddered and collapsed in on itself with a strange, muffled implosion. Jack ducked behind a tree, shielding the unconscious alien with his body. When he looked back, the craft had melted into a puddle of shimmering material that was rapidly hardening. "That's not good," he muttered. The journey back to his cabin seemed to take forever. The alien remained unconscious, but occasionally she would mutter strange syllables that no human tongue could form. Once her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water, before closing again. Jack laid her gently on his bed and cleaned the wound on her temple. The ink-like blood had already stopped flowing, and the cut seemed to be sealing itself. He covered her with a blanket and built up the fire in the wood stove. Then he sat in his chair, rifle across his knees, and watched the alien princess sleep. "What the hell am I supposed to do with you?" he asked the silent cabin. Outside, the stars continued their cold vigil over the Montana wilderness, looking somehow different to Jack now that he knew for certain that someone, had come from among them. For the first time in years, Jack Miller was no longer alone, and somehow, he knew his life would never be the same again. Jack dozed off in his chair sometime before dawn. He woke with a start to find a pair of color-shifting eyes staring at him from his bed. The alien sat upright, the blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She spoke, her voice like wind chimes in a summer breeze, but the words made no sense to Jack. "I can't understand you," he said slowly, setting his rifle aside to show he meant no harm. The alien tilted her head. She touched her throat, then pointed at Jack's mouth. "Language," she said suddenly, the word accented but clear. "Different." Jack nodded, surprised. "You learn fast." "Fast learn," she agreed, tapping her temple where the wound had been. There wasn't even a scar. Over the next few hours, Jack used simple drawings and gestures to communicate. The alien was incredibly intelligent, picking up words and sentence structures at an amazing speed. By midday, she could form basic sentences. "My name," she began, then made a series of musical sounds that Jack couldn't hope to repeat. He shook his head. "Too difficult for me." She thought for a moment. "In your words, Lyra. Call me Lyra." "Lyra," Jack repeated. "I'm Jack." "Jack," she said, placing a blue hand over her heart. "You saved me." He shrugged, embarrassed. "Couldn't just leave you there." Lyra stood up, moving with a grace that made her seem almost weightless. The circlet on her head caught the sunlight streaming through the window, sending little rainbows dancing across the cabin walls. "Your ship," Jack said. "It's gone." "It melted." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "Safety measure." "No evidence." "You're hiding from someone." Her face darkened. "Bad people. Want me dead." Jack felt a chill. "Why?" Lyra struggled with the words. She pointed to her circlet. "I am important. My world. Ilara. Like a leader. Yes, bad people take control. I escape." Jack ran a hand through his hair. He'd expected the day to involve chopping firewood and maybe fishing at the creek, not playing host to an alien princess on the run. "How far away is Ilara?" Lyra walked to the window and pointed to a faint star visible even in daylight. "There. Many, what you call years, of travel. So you're stuck here. For now." She turned to him, her shifting eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions. "Others will come. Others like you. Or the bad people. Both." That evening, as Jack cooked a simple meal of beans and rabbit, Lyra explored the cabin with childlike curiosity. She seemed fascinated by the most ordinary things: the wood stove, his hand-carved figures, even the wool blankets. "Your world is simple," she said, not unkindly. "Beautiful." "It's just a cabin," Jack replied. "Nothing special." Lyra shook her head. "Not cabin. You." She touched her chest, then his. "You help stranger. No questions. Rare gift. In any world." As they ate, Jack's old radio suddenly crackled to life. It hadn't worked in years, but now it pulsed with strange patterns of static. Lyra froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "They scan. Looking. For you?" She nodded, moving to the window to peer out at the darkening forest. "Soon they will come. Hunters." Jack joined her at the window. The forest looked the same as always, but now it felt different, full of unseen threats. His peaceful existence had just become very complicated. "Then we'll be ready for them," he said, surprising himself with his determination. Lyra looked at him with those impossible eyes. "Why help me? Dangerous for you." Jack didn't have an answer that made sense, even to himself. He just knew he couldn't abandon her. "Get some rest," he said instead. "Tomorrow might be a long day." 3 days passed with Lyra learning English at an astonishing rate. Jack taught her about Earth while she shared fragments of her world. The radio continued to emit strange signals, growing stronger each day. On the morning of the 4th day, Jack woke to the sound of distant thunder. Except there wasn't a cloud in the sky. "They're here," Lyra whispered, her blue skin paling to a lighter shade. "The hunters." Jack grabbed his binoculars and climbed to the cabin's roof. In the distance, a dark shape hovered above the trees before descending into the forest about 2 miles away. "Bigger ship," Lyra said when he described it. 5, maybe 6 hunters. "What exactly are these hunters?" "Elite soldiers. Kill anyone who helps royal family." Her color-shifting eyes locked onto his. "They will kill you without thought." Jack's mouth went dry, but he nodded. "We need to move. I know these woods better than anyone." They packed quickly. Water, food, Jack's hunting knife and rifle, though Lyra warned him the weapon would be useless against the hunter's armor. As they slipped out the back door, Lyra grabbed his arm. "Wait." She removed her circlet and hid it under a floorboard. Tracks energy. Might buy time. They headed deeper into the forest, moving swiftly along game trails that Jack had walked for years. He led them toward the rocky highlands where caves and overhangs would provide shelter and hiding places. By midday, they heard the first signs of pursuit, strange electronic chirps, and the occasional snap of a branch. Jack motioned for Lyra to follow him into a dense thicket. They crawled through the underbrush until they reached a small clearing hidden from view. They track by heat and movement, Lyra whispered. And smell. Jack thought quickly. There's a stream nearby. Water might mask our scent and temperature. They waded through the cold mountain stream for nearly half a mile, moving upstream against the current. Jack helped Lyra navigate the slippery rocks, impressed by her determination, despite her obvious fear. As the sun began to set, they took shelter in a small cave behind a waterfall, one of Jack's favorite fishing spots. The roar of the falling water would help hide them, at least for a while. Tell me more about these hunters, Jack said as they huddled together for warmth. Created to be perfect soldiers, Lyra explained. Enhanced senses, modified bodies. They live to hunt. Like anything, they can be outsmarted, Jack replied, though his confidence was mostly for her benefit. A sudden flash of light outside the waterfall made them freeze. Jack peered carefully through the curtain of water. A figure stood on the opposite bank, taller than any human, with broad shoulders and a helmeted head that reflected the dying sunlight. In its hands was a weapon unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The hunter scanned the area, then raised a device to its wrist. More electronic chirps followed. After what seemed like an eternity, it moved on, continuing upstream. He's searching in the wrong direction, Jack whispered, but they'll figure it out eventually. Lyra nodded grimly. We should. Her words cut off as a shadow fell across the cave entrance. Another hunter, this one approaching from downstream, its weapon raised. Jack reacted instinctively. He grabbed a rock and threw it far downstream, creating a splash. The hunter turned toward the sound, and Jack used the distraction to pull Lyra deeper into the cave, into a narrow side passage he knew led to another exit. They squeezed through the tight space, emerging on a steep hillside above the stream. Below, they could see the hunter investigating the cave, its helmet gleaming in the twilight. That was very brave, Lyra said, her voice barely audible. That was very lucky, Jack corrected her. Come on, I know a place they won't find us tonight. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Jack realized how strange his life had become. 1 week ago, his biggest concern had been gathering enough firewood for winter. Now he was running from alien assassins with a princess from another world. And stranger still, he didn't regret helping her for a second. The mountain cave was cold, but safer than anywhere else Jack could think of. He built a small, smokeless fire while Lyra kept watch at the entrance. The hunters had lost their trail for now, but both knew it was only temporary. We can't keep running forever, Jack said, offering Lyra some jerky from his pack. We need a plan. Lyra accepted the food with a nod. There is much I haven't told you. I figured that. She stared into the fire, her color-shifting eyes reflecting the flames. On my world, I am not just important. I am the crown princess, next ruler of Ilara Empire. 12 systems, billions of people. Jack sat back, letting this sink in. He'd rescued an alien, yes, but an alien princess who ruled billions. It seemed impossible. That circlet. Royal symbol, yes, but also communication device, emergency beacon. She looked up at him. My escape was not accident. My loyal guards arranged it when the coup began. You were supposed to go somewhere else, weren't you? Not Earth. Yes, safe planet with allies. Navigation system damaged in escape. She gestured helplessly. Your planet not known to most Ilarans. Very isolated. Jack poked at the fire. So these hunters. They're working for whoever took over your government. My uncle, Lyra said, her voice hardening. Brother of my mother. wanted throne for himself. A sudden thought occurred to Jack. If they're looking for you, they must know you're on Earth. That puts my whole planet at risk. Lyra nodded solemnly. I fear so. I am sorry to bring this danger. They sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, masking any sounds of pursuit. There is something else, Lyra finally said. Something I can do. Might help us communicate better. Your English is already pretty good. Not just words. Thoughts. Feelings. She hesitated. Royal family has ability. Make connection with others. Share minds. Jack raised an eyebrow. You mean like reading thoughts? Not reading. Sharing. Two-way bridge. She held out her hand. May I show you? Jack hesitated only briefly before taking her hand. Her skin was cool to the touch and smoother than any human's. Close eyes, she instructed. He did as she asked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a warmth spread from his hand up his arm and into his mind. The cave seemed to fall away, and suddenly he was standing in a grand hall with soaring crystalline spires that caught the light of 3 moons visible through enormous windows. Watching ships larger than cities glide silently through the atmosphere of a ringed planet, feeling the weight of responsibility as thousands of officials bowed before a young blue-skinned woman taking her place on a throne. The images came faster. The betrayal, the fighting, loyal guards rushing her to a small ship, the terror of spaceflight with pursuers close behind, the crash on Earth, and then Jack opened his eyes with a gasp. Lyra was watching him, her expression anxious. That was your life, he managed. She nodded. Small part. Did it hurt? No. In fact, it had been beautiful and terrifying all at once. I had no idea. Now you understand why they hunt me. She touched his temple gently. Bridge works both ways. I saw your life too. Your loneliness, your kindness. Jack felt strangely exposed, yet not uncomfortable. So what happens now? Your people must be looking for you too. Yes, loyal forces will search, but my uncle controls main fleet. She straightened her shoulders, suddenly every inch a royal. Jack Miller, you saved my life. By Ilaran custom, I owe you life debt. You don't owe me anything. Most sacred bond in our culture, she continued firmly. I will not leave your side until debt is paid. This is absolute. Jack started to argue but saw the determination in her eyes. This wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, a cultural obligation she took completely seriously. What about your empire? Your people need you. Yes, she agreed. But first, I need to survive. With your help. She placed her hand over her heart. I, Crown Princess of Ilara, pledge my protection to you as you have protected me. Outside, a distant electronic chirp reminded them that the hunters were still searching. The moment of connection had changed something between them, creating a bond neither fully understood. We should move before dawn, Jack said quietly. Lyra nodded, her royal bearing momentarily replaced by the practical survivor she needed to be. Together, 2 weeks after the crash, Jack and Lyra had settled into an uneasy routine. The hunters had widened their search, giving the pair a chance to return to Jack's cabin. They had retrieved Lyra's circlet and set up early warning systems, tripwires, and motion sensors made from Jack's hunting equipment. You eat this every day? Lyra asked, poking at the beans and rice on her plate. Jack shrugged. It's simple. Gets the job done. On Ilara, food is experience. She made a flourishing gesture with her hand. Colors, textures, sounds. Sounds. Jack raised an eyebrow. Your food makes noise. Some dishes sing when touched with eating tools. She smiled at his expression. Your face says you think I joke. I do not. These cultural exchanges had become common. Jack found himself constantly surprised by the differences between them, yet equally surprised by the similarities. Lyra was fascinated by his wood carvings. She sat for hours watching him work, asking questions about the tools and techniques. In return, she told him stories of her world's art, living sculptures that changed with the observer's mood and paintings that revealed different scenes depending on the time of day. But royal upbringing didn't prepare one for cabin life. Lyra struggled with the most basic tasks. She couldn't light the wood stove without singing her fingers. Washing clothes in the stream ended with everything soaking wet, including Lyra. And her first attempt at cooking nearly burned down the cabin. "I had servants," she explained sheepishly as Jack put out the small fire. "Never needed these skills." "Well, you're learning now," he replied, trying not to laugh. The biggest challenge was Lyra's complete lack of understanding about personal space. In the royal palace, she had entire wings to herself. Now, in Jack's one-room cabin, she was constantly too close, looking over his shoulder, touching his belongings, asking endless questions. "On my world, shared space is honor," she explained when he finally brought it up. "Shows trust. On my world, everyone needs a little privacy," Jack countered. They compromised by dividing the cabin into territories, with boundaries that shifted depending on the time of day. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. One evening, as Jack taught Lyra how to play chess, her circlet suddenly glowed. She touched it, and strange symbols appeared in the air above it, a hologram of some kind. "News from home," she whispered, her face lighting up. "Resistance grows. My people fight back." Jack watched as she read the floating symbols, her expression shifting between hope and concern. "They're planning to rescue me," she finally said. "Track my signal. Send extraction team." "That's good, right?" Jack asked, surprised by his mixed feelings about the news. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, but dangerous." She dismissed the hologram with a wave. "They won't come yet. Planning takes time." That night, Jack couldn't sleep. The thought of Lyra leaving stirred emotions he hadn't expected. He'd grown used to her presence, her questions, even her royal habits that clashed with his simple life. Through their mental bond, which had grown stronger with each passing day, he sensed she was awake too. "Jack," she called softly from her bed on the other side of the cabin. "Yeah. When my people come, would you consider—" She paused. "Coming with me? To Ilara?" The question hung in the air. Jack stared at the ceiling, thinking of distant worlds and alien palaces. What place would a simple woodsman have in an interstellar empire? "I don't know," he answered honestly. "You would have place of honor," she continued, "as my life-debt holder." Jack turned to look at her silhouette in the darkness. "Is that the only reason you want me to come?" The silence that followed was filled with unspoken thoughts passing through their bond. Confusion, affection, uncertainty. "No," she finally admitted. "Not only reason." Outside, an owl hooted in the night. Inside, two beings from different worlds lay awake, wondering about a future neither had imagined before a crashed ship brought them together. A month after the crash, Jack woke to find Lyra standing by the window, her circlet glowing brighter than he had ever seen it. The holographic symbols floating above it pulsed with urgent patterns. "They're coming," she said without turning. "Tomorrow night." Jack sat up, his heart suddenly racing. "Your people? Not the hunters. My loyal general leads the extraction team." Lyra turned to face him, her color-shifting eyes reflecting complex emotions. "They found a way to slip past my uncle's blockade." The day passed in a blur of preparation. They packed supplies, plotted the safest route to the extraction point, and discussed contingency plans in case the hunters discovered them. Through it all, Jack felt a growing heaviness in his chest. As evening fell, they sat by the fire eating the simple meal that Jack had prepared with extra care: trout from the stream, wild mushrooms, and the last of his coffee. "This is goodbye meal," Lyra observed quietly. Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "In royal court, goodbye ceremonies last days," she continued. "Many speeches, gifts, promises. She looked around the small cabin. This is better. Just us. Will you be safe? Jack finally asked. When you go back. Civil war continues. Not safe, but necessary. She touched her circlet. I am symbol. Hope for many. Jack understood. He'd seen enough through their mental bond to know that her return could turn the tide of the conflict. Her people needed her. The hunters, he asked, will follow me when I leave. She reached across the table and took his hand. Your world will be safe again. They sat in silence as the fire crackled. Outside, the Montana wilderness continued its evening symphony of rustling leaves and distant animal calls. Jack had never felt the solitude of his cabin quite so strongly as he did in this moment, knowing it would soon return. I have gift for you, Lyra said suddenly. She removed a small crystal from a hidden pocket in her clothing. Communication device, works across any distance. Jack took the crystal. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with an inner light, even between worlds. Yes, though messages take time to travel such distance, she showed him how to activate it with a simple touch pattern. So we can say hello. Sometimes. The gesture touched him deeply. I have something for you too. He went to his workbench and returned with a small wooden carving, a detailed figure of Lyra herself, standing tall and regal as the princess she was. You made this. She took it carefully, examining the intricate details. Been working on it when you weren't looking. He shrugged, embarrassed. Thought you might want something to remember Earth by. Lyra closed her eyes and held the carving to her chest. When she opened them again, they shimmered with emotion. Jack Miller, you saved my life. Then you share your home, your world. She stood up and moved around the table to stand before him. Life debt is serious thing. Cannot be broken. I never asked for. I know. She placed a hand on his cheek. That is why it matters more. Through their mental bond, Jack felt a surge of emotions too complex for words. Gratitude and admiration mixed with something deeper that neither of them had dared name. Come with me, she said suddenly. To Ilara. The offer hung in the air between them. Jack had known it might come, had even rehearsed his response, but now found himself speechless. I'm just a woodsman, he finally said. What would I do in an alien court? Be yourself, she replied simply. The man who acts without fear when needed, who shows kindness without question. Jack looked around his cabin. The simple life he had built, the solitude he had chosen after years of feeling out of place among his own kind. Then he looked at Lyra, a being from beyond the stars who somehow made him feel more at home than he ever had before. Your people need their princess, he said softly, not some human tagalong. Lyra's expression hardened with royal determination. I go nowhere without you. Life debt is absolute. Their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Through their bond, Jack felt her unwavering resolve. The princess who would soon lead an empire would not be denied. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, a ship was approaching, ready to take Lyra home. The moment of decision had arrived. The extraction point was a small clearing high in the mountains. Jack and Lyra arrived an hour before midnight, both breathless from the climb and the weight of what was to come. Are you sure about this? Jack asked one last time, his pack heavy on his shoulders. Lyra's blue skin seemed to glow under the moonlight as she nodded. More sure than anything in my life. The night sky above them suddenly rippled, like stones dropped in still water. A ship appeared, smaller than the hunter's vessel, but elegant in design, with curves and angles that seemed to blend seamlessly together. It descended silently, hovering just above the ground as a door slid open. 3 figures emerged, tall, blue-skinned beings with the same otherworldly grace as Lyra. The foremost wore armor that gleamed with strange symbols. He dropped to one knee when he saw Lyra. My princess, he said in a deep, musical voice. The stars dim in your absence. Rise, General Turan. Lyra replied, her voice taking on a formal tone Jack had rarely heard. "Meet Jack Miller of Earth. He is under my protection and will accompany us." The general's gaze shifted to Jack, his color-shifting eyes narrowing slightly. "A native. Princess, we have limited time before." "He comes with us," Lyra interrupted. "Every inch the royal commander. That is final." Jack stood straighter under the general's scrutiny. Through their mental bond, he felt Lyra's pride and certainty washing over him. "As you command," Torin finally said, bowing again. "We must depart immediately. The hunters have detected our approach." As if on cue, a distant electronic wail echoed through the mountains. The hunters had found them. The journey to Ilara took 12 Earth days. Jack spent much of it looking out viewport windows at the vastness of space, watching stars and planets sail by at speeds his mind couldn't comprehend. Lyra remained by his side, explaining the strange sights and sounds of interstellar travel. General Toran and his crew watched Jack with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, but none dared question the princess's decision. "They will accept you in time," Lyra assured him through their bond. Jack wasn't so sure. He felt more out of place than ever before, a simple woodsman on a royal vessel bound for an alien world. But when they finally arrived at Ilara, with its 3 moons and crystalline cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, Jack found an unexpected role to play. The rebellion was at a standstill. Lyra's uncle had technology in numbers, but her supporters had passion and loyalty. In strategy meetings, Jack listened quietly, then offered perspectives no Ellerin had considered. "Your weapons are too advanced," he explained one day. "Every move is detected. But simple things." He demonstrated snares and traps from his hunting days, adapted for their needs. The primitive approaches worked. Within months, the tide began to turn. Jack's Earth strategies, concepts like guerrilla warfare and psychological operations, confused Lyra's uncle's forces, who were trained for conventional space combat. When the final battle came for the capital city, Jack stood beside Lyra as she reclaimed her throne. The people cheered for their princess, returned from the stars to save them. Few noticed the quiet human who remained always at her side. Later, as Lyra settled into her role as ruler, she found Jack staring out at the alien landscape from a palace balcony. "You miss Earth," she said. It wasn't a question. Jack nodded. "It's simpler there. Makes more sense to me." Through their bond, Lyra felt his longing for pine trees and mountain streams, for the quiet of his cabin and the rhythms of a solitary life. "Then we find solution for both worlds," she declared. And so they did. Jack became the first unofficial ambassador between Earth and Ilara. He divided his time. 6 months on Ilara helping Lyra rebuild her empire, 6 months in his cabin, where Lyra would visit when affairs of state permitted. They built a small landing pad behind the cabin, hidden from curious human eyes. On the nights when Lyra's ship would descend from the stars, the local townspeople would look up and wonder about the strange lights in the sky above Jack Miller's mountain. Years passed. Earth remained largely unaware of its place in the wider universe, but a bridge had been built, a connection between worlds forged by an unlikely rescue and the bond that followed. "Life debt is never truly repaid," Lyra would say when Jack asked if she was finally free of her obligation. But they both knew it had evolved into something far beyond duty, something neither had expected when a princess crashed to Earth and a woodsman pulled her from the wreckage. As they sat together on the cabin porch watching another Earth sunset, they were already planning their next adventure among the stars.